able to pop in
Yeah.
whenever. And yes, this is recording. Yeah, so we're good to start at the top of the hour whenever you're ready. I think we've got a couple seconds here, but
Yeah.
yeah, welcome Jen, welcome Eduarda. I think that's how you pronounce your name. Please tell me if that's wrong, but welcome. This is the first webinar that I'm hosting as part of Wheelchair Rugby Canada, so that's super exciting. Yeah, and this is Glenn Cundari. I can let you introduce yourself if you'd like.
Hi, Jen. Yeah. Hey, everyone. So I know we're at top of the hour, and I appreciate a couple of you coming on. One of the things that we've learned, so a couple things. I am very fortunate through my work at Coach Plus to work with Wheelchair Rugby Canada, and we can talk a bit more about that as we go. If you don't know a lot about Wheelchair Rugby Canada, we understand. It's at this point, the sport is growing and doesn't have mass participation, and as a result, we literally have like a dozen coaches in the country. So when we are hosting these, we are never expecting to have 100 people on or 50 people on. This is has been communicated within the wheelchair rugby community, and softly invited to others outside of the sport as well. Mainly because this idea of coaching, as we all know, is coaching is coaching, as the saying goes. And so, we have an opportunity to talk about some specific topics that are definitely not sport related or sport specific. Jen was frozen. It looks like she just dropped because she had some bad connection. But Ryan, Eduarda, I personally would love if you had the ability and the technology to have a camera on. And the reason I say this, oh, there we go. Hi, Ryan. The reason I sort of make the request a bit is that maybe different than other webinars you've been part of or other environments, we are without PowerPoint. And that's not because of a technical error. That is because I am tired of looking at screens with images with a glass half empty and a glass half full. And we're going to have this metaphorical discussion on, this image on the screen. And I think at times we end up losing the heart of the conversation, which is like talking amongst us. Yeah, I heard once at a I don't know, it was at a conference or something where someone said the collective wisdom of the audience is always greater than that of the speaker. And so that always reminded me that I don't need to, if you will, virtually stand up here with a PowerPoint and pontificate to people on reflective practice, especially because to some degree you've been doing it already in your practice. So hopefully Jen gets back on. I see all kinds of things moving around here in the chat. Hi, Carrie. I know Carrie quite well. And if you have an opportunity, Carrie, and Eduarda, to turn your camera on, that would be amazing. I was just saying that we won't be using a PowerPoint intentionally. Especially in this idea of like reflective practice, this idea of talking to yourself, can be quite intimate, and sometimes we're super nice to ourselves, and sometimes we are less than nice to ourselves. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as it goes. And I find that a bit challenging to do with the 5 bullets around reflective practice. I think it's much more personal than that, to say the least. So. Everyone has fair warning. And Carrie, I know you just came on. Carrie, hello, Eduarda. Carrie, you just came on, and we were just saying that these are by design small webinars, and for sure we've had some requests for the recording, and that's born out of a sport that is frankly small and growing, and people like Avery, who is new to her job at Wheelchair Rugby Canada. So we're all in this and sort of this growth phase. So. So welcome. For a little bit of context, again, Avery had mentioned, my name is Glenn Cundari. I have the massive privilege of supporting Trevor Hirschfield, who is our national team wheelchair rugby coach, as well as 3 female coaches in their women in coaching program, and to do these webinars for sure. My full-time job, which people tell me it's cool, and I actually believe them. It is kind of cool. Is hanging out with coaches all day, every day. for sure in a multi-sport environment. Golf is the core sport that I come from, uh, and have spent a lot of time in coach development there. Also, um, our business is a proper business, I would say. It's no longer a solopreneur. We have staff of 5, and we have worked in person in 27 nations in a lot of different contexts and different sport. And so, to arrive and partner with Wheelchair Rugby and to learn about the sport, first of all, you got to be crazy to be a wheelchair rugby athlete. I have learned that, if nothing else. And the amount people want to learn and dig in has been really refreshing and very enjoyable to me. So yeah, so I'm coming to you from North Bay, here in Ontario, maybe a 3-hour car drive north of Toronto. My Toronto friends always make fun of where I live, and I always tell them that I live where they vacation. So I'm pretty sure I'm winning. I'm pretty sure I'm the winner in this one. So we are going to dive in today into this idea of reflective practice and whatever the heck that even means. But the idea here today, by its very title, when we talked about like a fresh approach or a fresh take on things, is that it's doable, it's useful, it's kind of lightweight. It doesn't, I think, for at least a couple that have your cameras on, thank you very much. Cliff, if you have an opportunity and are able to have your camera on, that would be definitely useful. Hello, Cliff. There we go. How you doing, man? Is to think about, like, when you hear someone say reflective practice or reflection, like what's a word or two or a sentence that comes to your mind when you hear that? Oh, we need to reflect. What do you think about?
I'd say being introspective.
Ooh, sounds serious. Yeah, good. With the outcome, what's the outcome of that? Like, why? What's the point?
Just you're looking inside yourself to kind of be critical, not in necessarily a negative way, but just in a thoughtful way of ways that you can improve or do things differently.
Yep. Okay. Absolutely. So kind of right. And I think, sometimes when we talk about this topic with coaches, it's not unusual that we go to like the deficit side of the ledger, right? What I'm not good at, what I could be better at. And I know sometimes, whether we know it or not, we looking at the asset side of our balance sheet as well. Hey, what's going well? What am I skilled at? Right? What are we doing well as a team, or whatever your particular sport? Because I know we do have some coaches here from golf as well. So, yeah. Hello, Jared. Welcome. And so, okay, so we talk about introspection, reflection, what we can do different. What else do we want to add to this conversation around when you think of the word reflection? What is coming to your mind?
I think of, well, for me, for my reflection, like I need to get my thoughts out of my head on paper. So when I think of reflection, it's, writing it down, or very tactile, or like very intentional, taking the time and carving it out. Even though I know for me, my reflection is just going kind of all the time in my brain. When I think of the word reflection, it has the connotation of okay, you got to set time aside and you got to be intentional about it.
And again, I think to Ryan's point, it becomes kind of like serious, right? And if you, so I do journal in my life inconsistently, but that's a little bit by design. And so, that is a way of reflecting for sure. But if I hear one more person say, you should journal as part of your reflection, I'm literally going to scream at the top of the mountain. And so journaling or writing things down can be one way of many, many ways of reflecting. And so for lots of people, for practical reasons, that may be difficult, right? And so whether it's timing or location or, here we are talking about wheelchair rugby, and we're in the community of some people with disabilities. Maybe my idea of like writing it down can be, motor skill wise challenging. So whatever we're talking about here, I do love the idea that we put out there, not, obviously this idea of thinking about what we're doing. Let's just keep it at that kind of level. And so for today, really talking like as coaches to each other. I'm, by default, I'm a coach. While I am a coach developer and work with coaches, at the heart of it, I am a coach. I'm still very involved in coaching Special Olympics. So, it's I'm with you. I'm sitting with you as a coach. So, guarantee you're all reflecting, right? You're driving home, practice was good or bad, and you're like, oh, that was crap, right? And we kind of have this self-talk that maybe or maybe not is useful. What I'd like to do is center today's discussion not on this like full idea of reflection, because I think some of the things that have already come out, each of the sentences a few of you have already said is like a whole dissertation research study on its own. So what we want to do is focus on two types of reflection for the moment. I would love if you could share. Do you have any experience with the terminology of reflection in practice and reflection on practice? Are those words that you have heard? You can use the chat, by the way, or feel free to come off and share a little bit, because that's really essentially what we're going to dive into. And I don't want to assume that people have not heard that language before. Reflection in and reflection on.
I don't think I've heard that language before.
Okay, cool. If you haven't, awesome. It can be one of the nuggets for the day. Does anyone want to take a stab? What is it? It's kind of risky just to guess, but let's have a go. I spend my whole life just guessing. In and on.
I don't know if anybody else wants to take a stab at it, but I'll what I'm when you first said it, I was like, oh, I don't know. But then for me, I'm thinking reflection in practice is that I'm practicing reflecting, and reflecting on practice to me means that I'm reflecting on. Now, the more I say it, the more I'm thinking like it's not right. But
let's go.
but just reflecting on practice. When you initially said it, I'm thinking I'm reflecting on a practice that I just planned and facilitated.
Okay, now we're talking. So first of all, let's be clear on the word practice. We don't necessarily mean like a team practice, like a wheelchair rugby practice or a hockey practice. Although, given the environment that we're in sport, we can put those together, right? Because we could be reflecting on a game, right, or a competition. So the words a little bit kind of give it away, and I'm kind of lining up more or less behind you, Avery, and what you're saying. So reflection in practice. We have all had moments where an athlete will ask us a question, or we give feedback or direction, and we think, oh man, that was not very good. Like in the moment, right? So when you think about we're talking about in the moment. So, hey, if it's, again, we'll use multi-sport because we have a few different sports here. If it's soccer and we say, okay, everyone line up over here behind the cone, and then you've lined them up and you're like, oh, that was not the best. And so then you decide to either make it work and limp through it, or you decide to make a change. But while you're doing that, you're often reflecting of like, oh, that was, oh man, I killed, that was so good. That feedback I just gave that person was so good, right? Or it might be otherwise, or it might be somewhere in the middle. So we do, and I'm sitting with you again. So we do a completely crap job as coaches of reflecting in action, right? We at times we will reflect in a way that is maybe not so contributing to our development as coaches, but we're not really good at capturing some of that. What we are good at is reflecting on practice, right? Which is, okay, our practice is over. The competition is over. I've given my speech. It's over. But whenever this event that you're reflecting on is over, right? I just baked a cake. I'm done. I'm going to reflect on it. That is what we typically will do. We'll sit with other coaches, with athletes, and we'll say, okay, and then we'll usually ask bad questions like, hey, how did that go? Or what do you think? And then we get crappy feedback because we're not asking really great questions. And then it sort of ends up being maybe less than effective when we're talking about the whole outcome of reflection, right? So we should circle back. When I look backwards, reflecting, whether it's in the moment, something that happened 10 seconds ago, or an hour ago, what is the whole purpose of reflection? Why look backwards?
To learn from the past.
Yeah, perfect, Ryan, right? To be better forward. We look back so we can be better forward, right? And I was just with some volleyball coaches on the during some university games this past weekend, and all I kept hearing was the coach going over to one of the analytics guys saying, "How many missed serves we had? How many missed serves?" And he was really sour, right? And he was using the missed serves as like a weapon, right? Rather than, and so what happens is he would get in the timeout and talk about, oh, we missed this many serves. I'm like, I don't understand the point of rehashing that, as opposed to using that information to figure out what we can do better in the next set or in the next coming points or whatever that is, right? So trying to help him understand that we need to coach to the big scoreboard, not to what the iPad is saying, right? For data. So let's reflect in action, yeah. But still, the purpose, even in the moment, is to think about what we can do better in 2 minutes from now. So let's go back to where we were. We reflect on a given event or a practice or a competition. Because we often don't always ask the best questions, we sometimes get information that isn't particularly useful. Keeping in mind that the crappiest practice you have has some good stuff in it, and the best practices you have some junky moments in them. So this idea, when we reflect on practice at the end, what this is averaging out things. It's a summation of all of it put together. So we'll say things like, oh man, that was an awesome practice. And we might be aware enough to be able to say, here's why it was awesome. Okay. Uh, the challenge with that is that we miss some really important nuance and some really important pieces that we need to capture as coaches throughout the practice. So, what we want to be able to do at the end of practice, if you want to say, is to find those key points, whether they're written down. I would definitely encourage you to use your phone to do little mini 10-second voice notes. And I know that might sound weird. You're in the middle of a basketball practice. I can tell you this, when you tell your athletes, I'm working on reflecting better so I can be a better coach, you might see me grab my phone out of my pocket and talk to it for 10 seconds. I'm doing that to reflect on my coaching. Every single athlete, if they don't say it out loud, will be like, holy crap, that is cool. None of my other coaches do that. And so this is where some vulnerability, it's a whole different topic, but expressing that vulnerability to say, this is what I'm working on. So that at the end of a practice, you can find your 5-10 second voice notes, listen to them, or your written notes, or whatever you are particularly using, right? That we can go back and think about those so that this averaging or this summation at the end has more nuance and is not so like top level generic. So what we at the end of all this, we end up having much more accurate reflection of what really happened. Right? So then we can be even more prescriptive when we go forward. So for example, when you reflect, and you say to a coach, hey, oh man, today's practice was really fun. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. What did you do as a coach to create this fun environment? And they almost always freeze. They don't know the answer to that. They just know it was fun. Well, I'm going to say if we're a coach, oh, good. Yeah, thanks, Avery. If I'm a coach, right, I want to know what I did to make it fun so I can make sure I do it again next time. Or, hey, you know what? We challenged them just the right amount. Well, what did we do? Right. And so we're trying to be very behavioral based, very not framework theory based. So the point here is to try to have accurate feedback, accurate self feedback / reflection. Also, one of the challenges is that the further we get away from the moment, the more I will say we start to story tell. We all story tell in our lives, right? Usually we don't story tell on the positive side. I mean, sometimes, yeah, hopefully, but very often this storytelling, oh man, I'm not a very good coach. Oh, I didn't run a great practice. My blah, blah, blah. I'm looking at my assistant coaches who are in the corner, just organizing cones because, I should have given them more direction on what to do here at practice. And so what we're trying to do is, yeah, fine, we're going to have self-talk. I get it. But to try to nip it a little bit earlier so that the storytelling is more reflective of what actually happened. Okay, so that's the premise of this little mini piece of reflection is in action and on action so that we can increase accuracy, manage storytelling that we will have, and to think about what we're going to, Ryan's point earlier, what are we going to change? All right. But let's make sure every good balance sheet in finances, it's a balance sheet for a reason, right? Has some things on the asset side. What are we also going to keep doing? You know what? We did a great job of welcoming athletes today when they came into the gym. Yeah, you know what? I think everyone got a high five. Everyone got a hello. Everyone got a, hey, how was your weekend? We did a great job of that. Let's make sure we do that again. I can promise you that if we know that that's really important. I'm just using it as a random example. We know that's a really important theme for having effective training is where people feel welcome, safe, all those kinds of things, connected. If we don't, at the end of welcoming everyone, if I don't make a note of what a great job I did welcoming everyone, it will get glossed over. But these are not things that should get glossed over. And my challenge to you is how can you start to do reflection in action and only notice the good stuff? Just play with that for a few weeks because that bad stuff, if you want to call it, that is like, come on, that is so easy, right? Like anyone can sit up in the top seats of the hockey game and go, oh, you should have passed it. Like, okay, any idiot can figure that out, right? We can all figure out the stuff you didn't do well. But let's onboard yourself into reflecting in action a little bit easier so we don't have to beat ourselves up. Let's find 1 or 2 or 3 things that you can note with your pen or paper or your phone, or even if you're familiar with like some tagging apps or like whatever you use at the end to say, love it. Practice that for a month. It will take 0 seconds of your life to do. Okay, I feel like I just yelled at the computer. I love this topic so much. For the 1, 2, 6 of you are on here, what seed have we planted?
I think that when I think of some of my practices, I'll just use yesterday's example. It sometimes it's hard as a coach / ex-athlete or whatever in doing it. We have to include ourselves in the practices because of our numbers that we may have it there. So sometimes you'll be doing a drill where you're focusing, I'm just going to use key defense, right? And then you need to have someone in there because you need the numbers, right? And so you put yourself into this key defense, and as you're doing the drill, you kind of have to disassociate yourself while doing it because you're playing the game while you got to be watching what everybody's doing.
Yep.
And then afterwards, you reflect yourself as did I get to that? Did I get enough information to the guys or the athletes? Because what my mind was too involved in actual playing the sport than it was coaching it.
Yep. Amazing.
And so like as I drive home, I sometimes say, okay, was I able to express what I wanted at the same time playing the game, that's one of the challenges that sometimes, and maybe I'll use Cliff as an example because I've seen him in a chair a lot of times too. I don't know whether you have enough players where you can don't have to jump into a chair or not, but I think one of the hardest parts about sometimes having coaching and if you were an athlete at the same time too, is having to realize that you have to coach first and play second, I guess, is sometimes the issues that I have at least, as in yesterday, I thought I had a great practice where I was just literally being the pylon, I guess, quote unquote, on the but still being able to engage in instruction while these guys are doing their drill, right?
Cliff, I'd love for you to maybe chime in, mainly because Jared mentioned your name, and if there's something you want to share.
Yeah, if I'm playing in a game and coaching, I pretty well, unfortunately, just have to focus on playing. I just can't cause that separation during a game. But during practice, yeah, you do try to sit back a little bit and see what's happening, or you bring your own intensity down to where it slows down the play and stuff so that you can explain as you are running the drill or demoing it and stuff like that. So there's definitely a benefit of being in the chair during practice, but you can get caught up with play and not separate yourself, right? I did like, Glenn, that you brought up is just those quick little notes during practice or even during game, because you're right, at the end you kind of forget everything that you identified. Like we're all good at identifying, it's just remembering at the end to give a good brief or develop some exercise that corrects that behavior that you noted. But if you don't remember as you walk out of the gym, it doesn't help at all, right?
Yeah, it's not really a reflection. I mean, there's this, this idea of when's the last time you thought, okay, that didn't go how I want. I'll think about it later, and then we never come back and revisit it. Like this happens all the time. Eduardo, you're nodding your head. Everyone is nodding their head that I can see. We do this all the time. Okay, that sucked. We'll think about it. We'll figure it out later. And then, of course, other things happen in practice, post-game, debrief. Crap, I'm late. I got to get home and drive my kids to wherever. Like life happens and we don't ever come back to it. So, by kind of bookmarking it, if you want to say, it gives us that opportunity. That is something that is unique. Jared and Cliff, thanks for mentioning that. For those of you who are not part of wheelchair rugby, I certainly don't want to speak from a place of authority, but I have experienced the idea of player coach, where you are, playing double role, whether it's in training or in a competition. Certainly, I would say in a training environment, there is a responsibility. That's a big word for you all to wear your coach hat while you're playing. And I get sometimes you need the numbers and those things. And if we bring this down to the level of reflecting in action, that makes it really, really hard, of course. I also am a believer that, if you want to do like everyone else and just be like everyone else, then, go for it. I also think that there's 6 of you who have said, I don't want to do things like everyone else. I'm going to hop on this webinar and invest some time. If it's me, I'm literally, if I'm in the chair and I'm playing as a player coach, I have someone on the sideline that I'm just going to yell, like, mark down what time it is right now. Right? It's 2:12, right? Just write 2:12 down. And I'm telling them before I go on the floor. I might yell at you a couple times, like a time, or I might even give you like a single word, right? Then I can come back and that one word, right? If I say, hey, like the word is question, that reminds me of a question that I had to myself or something that we can then come back and visit. Everything doesn't have to be 3 sentences with a pen in a journal, right? How can you involve other people in this? Because part of reflective practice is not necessarily, I think, Ryan, you mentioned at the beginning, this idea of, or introspection, maybe Cliff, you mentioned it. And yes, there's some introspection, but part of the joy of reflecting is also doing it with other people, right? To be able to say to your 2 other coaches, 3 other coaches, other players, your leadership captain team, whatever that is to come back and have these reflective questions of inaction. Hey, what's one thing you thought of today while you were out there that you made note of? What's one thing for me? How does this inform our reflection on how it went as a whole? And so this is not magic, and you still have to invest time and energy. But I would say that if we can find 10 minutes a training session or 10 minutes a match or whatever it is, you are doing yeoman's work, as we would say. Yes. Just looking at some of my prompting questions that I had. So let's think about this then from what are the possibilities of using others on your, I'll say team, whatever you're defining team as, to help with this? Eduardo, are you coaching wheelchair rugby?
My English not good. I'm from Brazil. I will try. So I am studying physical education, but in Brazil we study more sports than like school.
Okay.
And this year I start in a team and like internship, I think. And I didn't know the sport, so I am learning through the training and
Excellent.
the stuff. And
where are you going to school?
Is I don't know how to explain, but it's a federal university for my state.
Okay, cool. Great.
In my team, we have me and other guy who is studying too, and a head coach, but he cannot go to every practice. So it's me and the other boy who coach the guys on the weekends. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, great. So first of all, thank you for having the courage to use English. And your English was 10 on 10. It was perfect. We're good. You're very easy to understand. Okay, so right now we're 32 minutes into the webinar. For sure, there's not much more than 40 minutes planned. I have a few other things maybe that we can chat about. I would love to have a conversation about either things that you're currently doing and you feel like with some small changes. Look at this, Carrie Moffat is in the house. Hello, Carrie. What are some things that you can currently maybe just modify a little bit that would increase our capacity to reflect a little bit more accurately, a little bit more prescriptively, meaning specifically about what we can do different and what we want to keep doing? That's kind of the question. Let me summarize it. What can you currently do a little bit different to make what you're doing more effective using reflective practice?
I think it's always good to get somebody else's perspective, like whether it's an assistant coach or a player, or even just like somebody from your organization that's not involved. They're just kind of the eye in the sky, because we always have our own filter, our own paradigm of how we see things. But it's good to get an objective point of view to maybe realize things that we don't even clue into.
Yeah, that is coaching right in a nutshell, isn't it, Ryan? We think we're awesome, and then people tell us we're not, and then we think we're crap, and then they tell us we're awesome. And really, without being sarcastic, the whole point kind of this is to move those kind of things closer together, right? And to figure out, like I say, we just don't spend enough time thinking about the things that we do well. You all do so many good things in your coaching, which doesn't mean you don't have a whole long list of things to get better at. When you ask coaches, what are you good at? They'll say things like building relationships. I'm organized. And it's like the most vanilla, blah, blah answers ever. I'm like, well, what are the behaviors that you take on to build relationships? Right? What are those? I use humor well. Okay, like, and I know that's very specific, but absence of having the specificity, fun word to say, I don't know what you then try to replicate. Right? We're trying to build a higher level of awareness by being mindful in the moment, which supports better reflection after.
I agree with Ryan in a lot of that and everything you said about it. One thing I think of reflecting, what I like to do is maybe my equipment managers or stuff like that, or even the athletes. I like, did I describe this drill or did I describe this scenario? Did I describe it right? Because as an ex-athlete or anything like that, it's all in my head. I can run a scenario over and over again, no problem. But actually describing it is sometimes that I find a hard time doing to the accuracy that it makes sense to my athletes. So a lot of questions what I ask even then when I'm reflecting on it is when I ask the athletes, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, do you understand the words that come out of my mouth? Like, because it's one thing that I could just play that scenario over and over in my head and do it no problem because it's second nature to me. But my athletes, are they getting the right information that's coming out of my head there, basically?
Yeah. Whoa, you just opened up a whole, not even a can of worms, Jared. You opened up a monsoon of worms. So I do want to touch on a thing or two here. So when you have a situation that is clunky, let's just call it, right? You describe an activity or a drill. Jared, what age are you coaching?
Oh, sorry, adults.
Yeah. So, because what age am I starting to play wheelchair rugby?
It's 18 plus usually.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So in this case, right, you're talking to adults, you feel like your message or your direction, your feedback hasn't landed. Like, that is a time where we need you to tick the piece of paper, put an X on your notes, write a word or two to be able to say, okay, I need to revisit that, right? Because we know it didn't work, but I will guarantee you the next time that you practice getting that one, trying to get it right, will be the next time you do it in practice. And so it's always, as someone who likes to advocate for coaches, I find it immensely frustrating and actually unfair that athletes get all these times to practice. They get feedback, they practice again, we give feedback, but coaches don't get a chance to practice. Could you imagine saying, okay, everyone, today's practice, I'm focusing only on me. I'm going to practice this and this. Like, that would be weird. But so we only practice when we're like on deck. So we need to be able to say that description or that those instructions I gave were clunky, they didn't land. Note it. After practice, whatever, then we come back and say, okay, how will I say it different next time? I run it through my head. Maybe I say it aloud. Maybe I voice note it and listen back, right? And then I'm like, okay, I'm better now. Next time I will deliver it something like this. This is the responsibility. Otherwise, good luck, because you never get the chance to have these practicing your practice. A little bit, Jared, to your point, what you brought up was the idea of checking for understanding, right? And whether we're coaching, in Carrie's case, some quite young girls in golf, or some of you in adults in wheelchair rugby, right? We need to make sure that when we give these instructions or give feedback, that they are understanding what we're trying to achieve. The challenge, Jared, when you say, does everyone understand? This happened with a university basketball coach last week, and everyone says, yeah, coach, got it, no problem. U Sports, pretty high level. Then they go run the drill, and the drill is a mess. Coach becomes less than patient.
Mm-hmm.
Coach she says to the girls, what the hell? You all said you understood. What is going on here? Blah, 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 blah. So I talk to coach after and say, hey, when you ask, does everyone understand? One of the things is if I think I totally understand it, I'm going to put my hand up and say, I understand. The challenge is what I'm understanding and what you want me to understand are different things. So we go start the drill. I become a drill buster. I'm now in the bad books because I said I understood when I actually didn't. So the difference is, hey, does everyone understand? Yes. Ryan puts his hand up. I'm like, Ryan, just explain back what we're doing here. Well, we're going to go here. Oh, okay. No, you don't quite understand. Let me have a go at this again. Right. So these are these moments that we don't want to lose in practice in the larger sense in a game, or whatever that might be. Yeah. So checking for understanding, kind of a first cousin of reflection a little bit. But equally important. Love it.
I can relate to that a lot. Like I love what you spoke about, Jared and Brian, relating to both what you talked about, but that checking for understanding it, like just myself as an athlete in meetings, like everyday life. I'm like, okay, you tell me something, and then I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm just gonna repeat back, and that's something I gotta repeat back to you and ask questions. And then you got to explain it to me again, and then I'll repeat it back to you, make sure. For me, for my personal learning style, like that is something that I think I'm lucky that I can do for myself, but I'm not necessarily the best at, facilitating that with the athletes that I've coached. Because I've definitely been in that situation where I'm like, okay, does that make sense? Like, do you get what I'm saying? And I've asked and waited and paused, hoping that would be enough. And sometimes it's not, sometimes it is, sometimes I don't have time to see what that in action if they do understand it. Yeah, but I relate to everything that's been said, and I just wanted to share that piece.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Avery. I mean, there's no rule, there's no way to do this, right? Each of you needs to figure out what makes sense practically, time-wise. I mean, there's not many sports where you are a player and a coach at the same time and have to make the cognitive space for both, right? Because while you're out there as a player coach, when you're a player, I think whoever was saying earlier that you then maybe don't want to decrease the tempo because you're thinking as a coach and the intensity isn't at the level you want. And but that's kind of a you problem in a way, right? Like we can't give up kind of both. And so how do we lean on other people, etc. Okay, so what next? We're 45 minutes in. What now? What's one thing that you may have a go at? And I am a huge fan of in some small way, not just letting things sit after a webinar. So you can, when I say what's next, I mean this literally. Let's go like, I'm putting my deets in the chat because, and then we're going to go 2152. Okay. If you're up for accepting the challenge and you want to write down one or two, and it doesn't matter how small they are. If you're trying to lose 100 pounds and you say, I'm going to eat one piece of broccoli a day, that's all we need. Right? So I say that. If you want to text me or email me a point or two to accept the challenge of sharing one or two small things that you want to get better at, once a month for the next 3 months, I will check back with you and ask how it's going and if you need any resources, etc. Specifically around reflection, also to say whatever you're up to with your coaching. Okay. So let's see. We have a few things here. Dropping off. Okay. Yeah. Good, Cliff. I missed that a few minutes ago. Great.
I did have a quick question for you on the sharing the 1 to 2 things.
Yeah.
Is there a way, or like for me, I am part of Wheelchair Rugby Canada, but I'm not a coach for a team, not yet at least. And for softball, we're in the off season right now. And I haven't entirely decided if I want to coach again next spring. But Is there a way, or can you recommend a way to still be reflective on practice when either I'm not in season or I'm not directly working with athletes? Yeah, is there a way for me to
So
do
what a
that?
great question. And let's not confuse reflection with coaching, right? You said earlier today when you were just trying to get a little bit of technology, Avery, you didn't look like super confident. You're like, hey, everyone, this is the first webinar I've ever hosted. So the self-talk in your head is just like, am I getting this right? Oh, geez, do I look dumb? Oh, no, I got it right. Excellent. So you can reflect on this. You can reflect on a meeting you have with Paul in Georgia. Later on, you can reflect on how you made dinner. Like, you know what I mean? You can reflect on your emotions when someone cut you off on the road. Like, there's no moments that we can't do reflection in and on action. For us, obviously, the common thread is coaching. But, you know, if I'm a doctor and I see patients, there's lots of opportunities, to do that. So I would, find the 10 opportunities per day. Pick one. Yeah.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah, good.
And that's
Thank
a
you.
hard thing too for me sometimes, where it's like when I talk about coaching, I'm thinking like, okay, all of this applies just to coaching. And I segment out I can separate my life like that, which can be good, but when especially reflective practice can be good in all parts of my life. Like just even you say like, okay, wait, reflection isn't just for coaching, it's for everything. And just putting that like into words and then pointing that out definitely I go, oh, you're right. And it's not that I don't do it, but it's just like that realization, that tangible connection.
Coaching is leadership. Leadership is life. Like, it's all kind of all messy, mucked up, right? I literally learned. I was a bit of a hothead when I was coaching Bantam AAA hockey. So they were at the age they were being drafted in the Ontario Hockey League, where it's pretty decent level, blah blah blah. But I would be the guy who would, get at the ref after the ref made a good call. Like, I was just, So I was like, okay, this isn't good. So literally the way I started to get better is when I also am very calm on the road. Like, people can cut me off, and I'm like, it doesn't fluster me. So when that would happen, I would pretend and imagine that was a referee driving. And I'd be like, oh, look, it's a referee. I can be calm. Because if in my hockey life, I would just like snap at the ref. So, there's all these opportunities to take our leadership and our coaching stuff outside of the sport environment. So, and Jared, you get the Gold Star Award for being the first. I just got a text from Jared. So
I have to do it sooner, otherwise I don't reflect on actually doing it or not.
Reflecting on reflecting. That's very meta. Yes. So I am happy to come near the end and start to think a little bit about wrapping up. I hope you appreciate having no PowerPoint and just having a bit of a discussion. I think I'm going to try and retire my PowerPoint life and do more of this kind of stuff. I would also say that if reflecting is hard for you, to dig in and first of all, cut yourself some slack. Like, that's my number one advice to all coaches of all sports, of all genders, of all age. Cut yourself some freaking slack. And so if reflecting is hard because you find yourself going to places that are difficult, that's also okay, right? Your coaching is not a reflection of like your worth. And without making it, too deep, sometimes we get into like reflecting. You're like, oh, that's a bit scary. Maybe I'll just reflect later on that. And then, we kind of walk away from it. That's okay, right? Intentionally not reflecting, you can kind of almost make the cases a version of reflecting. And so I'm just saying, if you find it difficult, reflect on things that maybe are a bit easier for you, and onboard yourself into it, and be curious about your own, about you, and being curious. Well, what did Ted Lasso say? Come on, someone. What did Ted say? Throwing darts.
Curious, not judgmental.
Right. Be curious about yourself as a coach. Be curious about your reflection, and at the same time, avoid or do your best at not being judgmental, because that's not the point of reflection. We all know that. That's my closing thought. It got really serious at the end. Thank you very much, Avery and Wheelchair Rugby, for having me, and we'll continue to do the work that we do with coaches. I know Trevor's with the dev team in Prague right now, and we'll be watching and cheering on those matches. Jen and Carrie in particular, I know you're both from golf. I would really encourage you to find some of the streaming. I can send you some of the links of watching Wheelchair Rugby in action. It's so fast and violent. It's so cool. Yeah. Any parting shots before I wrap up? I know Avery has recorded, and it will be shared, I'm assuming, with this group and a bunch of people who registered who didn't necessarily make it on. Yeah. Thanks, Jen. I appreciate you coming on.
I just want to say thanks, Glenn, and everybody appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, Ryan. Thank you for coming on. And yeah, everyone has my info should you desire to stay in touch.
Okay,
Thank you very much. It was great. It was very informative. Thank you very much.
Good. Yeah, thanks, Jared. Yeah, look forward to texting with you. Okay, all have a good rest of your day.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Glenn.
All right, you're welcome. Bye.
Bye.